Okay, so I will get us going because we are at our 1 o'clock. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining for this great May YVSC community meeting. I am Michelle Stewart, the Executive Director with Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, and it is such a pleasure to be able to convene this great discussion today that's focused on water conservation and resilience policies, programs, and opportunities from the local to the state level. As many of you know, Yampa Valley Sustainability Council was established as a nonprofit in 2009, and we are guided by the mission to serve as a leader, resource, and catalyst for building a sustainable and resilient Yampa Valley region. These topic-focused monthly community meetings are designed to convene leaders, program partners, and community members for presentations and discussions on key issues and initiatives so that we can learn together, ask questions, connect, and find ways to meaningfully contribute to the sustainable and resilient future we need. For today's meeting, we have a great lineup of speakers joining us from the state and locally who will collectively speak to the ways the state legislature, state-funded programs and incentives, and local programs and initiatives advance water conservation and watershed resilience at a time we crucially need it. Climate change in the West means water change in the West, so every action we take to reduce water consumption in our built environment and retain water in our natural systems, the more resilient our future outlook becomes. Here in the Yampa Valley, our economic and social ties to the Yampa River are strong, making it all the more essential to take our understanding of how water in our basin is changing due to climate change and transform it to actions that increase water conservation and watershed resilience. Today, we have the great pleasure of hearing from Kelly Romero-Heaney, Colorado Department of Natural Resources Deputy Policy Director, share some key takeaways from the Colorado legislative session. We also have Jenna Battson, the Colorado Water Conservation Board Outdoor Water Conservation Coordinator, who will provide us with an overview of the turf replacement program. And we have YVSC's own Madison Muxworthy, our Soil Moisture Water and Snow Program Manager, who will share some information about our water conservation programming highlights. I will introduce each of our speakers in turn, but first I'll just give us a brief overview of what to expect for the structure. Following our presentations, we should have about 15 minutes or so for a roundtable or a Q&A. For those that are joining, and if you have questions that come up during the speakers' talks, please just post your questions in the chat or put something in there and say that you'd like to ask it. And then we will have time for questions at the end after all speakers are done. Please do remember to mute your microphones if you haven't already. And if the chat is full of good questions and content, we'll be sure to share it out with all who are registered attendees at this time. So at this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Kelly Romero-Heaney. Kelly Romero-Heaney is the Deputy Policy Director for the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, a role she took in March 2024 after serving as DNR's Assistant Director of Water and Water Policy Advisor to Governor Polis for 3 years. Kelly has come to be distinguished across the state for her integrated approach to water resource management, ever connecting the ways our use of water in our built environment is deeply tied to its dynamic and changing supply in snowmelt-dominated basins like ours in the Yampa River Basin and elsewhere. Prior to joining DNR, Kelly served as the City of Steamboat Springs Water Resources Manager, where she was first appointed to be a member of the Colorado Water Equity Task Force, where she served as board chair of the Yampa River Fund, where she served as Routt County Municipal Representative and Public Education Committee Chair for the Yampa White Green Basin Roundtable, and where she played a long-standing leadership role in creating the Upper Yampa Watershed Group, an organization of over 100 participants that includes representatives from local government, agriculture, industry, recreation, nonprofits, and private stakeholders to assess non-point source water quality needs within the Upper Yampa Basin. Kelly's more than 20 years in natural resources and water management is an asset to our state and region, and she holds a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Geology from the University of Montana and recently completed her Master's in Environmental Science and Policy from Johns Hopkins University. Kelly, welcome. Thank you so much for your service to the state and for joining us today to share updates from the recent legislative session.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and I'm thrilled to join you all for a late lunch talk about what went on down at the Capitol in Denver between January and May 8th of this year. So thanks again. And also it's just really great to be here amongst my Yampa Basin friends as well. As I just noted, May 8th was when the 74th General Assembly completed its work, and there were almost 800 bills considered this session. That's a lot of changes to the law. There are quite a few big water wins that I'd love to share with you all today, which I think also directly apply to water management in the Yampa Valley. So the first one I wanted to note was the House Bill 24-1435. This is the Colorado Water Conservation Board's annual projects bill. It's really great. They have this bill every year. It's how they allocate the dollars that they receive from their revolving fund loans and their perpetual base fund, severance tax, etc. There was over $220 million in this year's projects bill. It included $23 million in water plan grant funding for water storage and supply projects, ag projects, engagement innovation, conservation land use planning, and watershed health. It also include an additional $2 million for turf replacement, which Jenna will talk to here in just a moment. $2 million for innovative water forecasting. So that would be like the Airborne Snow Observatory work. Also $4 million for drought planning, and over $165 million in loans for water projects. And the nice thing about that is the CWCB generates revenue off those loans. And then finally, there was $20 million for the acquisition of the Shoshone water right, which the Colorado River District is leading on. And the idea there is to really maintain the flow regime on the Colorado. Another helpful pro forma annual bill is the Species Conservation Trust Fund bill, which allocated $5 million to the recovery of threatened and endangered and sensitive species. This includes $1.8 million towards the Upper Colorado River Endangered Fish Recovery Program. A lot of that work is happening right here in the Yampa Basin. So really great bill for us. The next one, which I'm sure you all are really interested in, is Senate Bill 24-5. This is the prohibition on non-functional turf, artificial turf, and invasive plant species bill. And this bill has already been signed by the governor. And basically what it does is it says local jurisdictions, HOAs, cannot allow the planting or installation of non-functional turf, artificial turf, or invasive plant species as part of a new project or development after January 2026. What this means is local jurisdictions are going to have to update their land use codes to make sure that they're complying with the requirements of the bill, and they need to do that by January 2026. It's a great way to start getting rid of what silly grass or whatever you want to call it, so we can really transform our urban landscapes. I know Jenna's going to touch on this more. It also obligates the state to lead in this space by 2025. We also, with our state facilities, can no longer allow non-functional turf to be installed. I'll note that we're already working on this as Governor Polis signed an executive order last September to get us started on that work. So really excited about that bill. Another one, House Bill 24-1436. This is to put a ballot measure, to put a measure on the ballot to allow the state to keep the revenue from sports betting that's over the existing $20 million cap. So to keep that money for water plan grants. We anticipate that could generate maybe on the order of $2 to $5 million a year. As of now, anything over $29 million, the state has to return because of Tabor. So you'll all will get an opportunity to vote on that in November. The next one, and I think there was a lot of buzz in media around this one, and this is Senate Bill 24-197, the Colorado River Drought Task Force. and water conservation measures bill. You all might have heard of the drought task force that was created last session. I served on that task force representing the Department of Natural Resources. We all met, moved around the state to really come up with recommendations that would help to really conserve and protect water supplies in the Colorado River Basin. There was some really great debate and discussion. A number of recommendations emerged from that. Actually, there were, 4 recommendations from the Tribal Subtask Force, and I believe 8 from the task force itself. I'll just note that recommendations as emerged, we're already able to move forward either through our CWCB projects bill, which I just noted, or through administrative efforts. Like, for example, we're working to better integrate water into how we do wildfire planning with local governments. So some really great recommendations there. 3 that were captured in the legislation itself include expanding the in-stream flow program. So this is the environmental flow program that's managed by the Colorado Water Conservation Board. Basically, what the bill will do is allow stored water to be loaned to the CWCB and then delivered to a reach that may not have a decreed in-stream flow. And I know I'm getting a little water ratesy here, but essentially, like as of now, there has to be like a decreed in-stream flow reach that's gone through water court before water can be loaned for that purpose. There are some challenges with that because it's really hard to get an in-stream flow decree, probably impossible on the Yampa at this point, besides the one that already exists above Catamount. But there's still the environmental need. And so this bill still puts a lot of guardrails on that. It has to go through a whole process with the CWCB board. The Division of Water Resources does an injury analysis to make sure it's not going to hurt other water users. At the end of the day, it does provide an additional tool to allow water from storage to be delivered where there's an identified environmental need. I think this tool could be particularly useful for the Yampa. Another feature of the Drought Task Force bill was waiving the matching requirements for water plan grants for the Southern Ute Indian tribe and the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, so we can really remove barriers for them to access those funds. And then also there was a provision to expand the agricultural water rights protection statute. It's kind of nuancy, but right now it only applies to the South Platte and the Arkansas Basin. With this law, it will now be something that could be utilized statewide, and it does help to prevent, it's one more tool to help us prevent the buying and drying of agriculture while still providing for environmental and municipal needs. So if you have questions about that, happy to speak to it. And then finally, there was one aspect of the bill that didn't emerge as a recommendation of the Drought Task Force, but still got included in the bill. And that's to provide abandonment protection for the water rights related to the electric generation at Hayden Station and Craig Station. Again, there's some real details and limitations there, but the idea was to protect those water rights until 2050 so they wouldn't come off the books, so that water could still be available to meet the state's clean energy goals, while also providing for a just transition in the Yampa Valley. I know we don't have a lot more time, so I think I'll just pause there. And I do have to jump a little bit early, so I might, if it's okay with you, Michelle, I'm happy to take questions now if there are any.
That's great. Yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to write them in there, or you can just ask. If I could ask you to expand a little bit, Kelly, you mentioned that the Drought Task Force bill provides protections against this buying and drying of agriculture. Can you explain what that means and why that's a success?
Yeah, well, we hope this tool will be utilized. There's a big problem, particularly on the Front Range, where so much land and water has been taken out of agricultural production to supply our rapidly expanding cities. We at the state are trying to figure out how do we both accommodate growth of our urban areas while also protecting agriculture, right? Because we still need to eat. And so there's a lot of things, of course, we're trying to do to accomplish that. Some of which is urban landscape transformation, which Jenna will speak to. But we're also trying to come up with more water sharing tools that don't take water out of agriculture permanently. So it'd be a way that a producer can still generate income off their water rights temporarily by these sort of like temporary transactions with municipalities, or if there's like an in-stream flow need, but they're not permanently transferring that water out of agriculture and off of the land. Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah, thank you so much. And it looks like we have a question from Susie Romig, which I'll ask. What is the most impactful measure to average citizens in Routt County?
That's a great question, Susie. I think that, oh man, it's really tough to narrow it down. I think that I mean, if you're talking about of all the legislation I just spoke to, I mean, the Colorado Water Conservation Board's annual projects bill is incredible. I mean, it provides a lot of resources to do great water work across Colorado, including watershed health work. And so I think just the dollars that we're able to allocate in that bill, I mean, $23 million for water plant grants is huge. And I know the Yampa Valley community has been really good about accessing those water plant grant dollars. I mean, they paid for things like restoring our riparian forest, among other things, building resilience into the Fish Creek watershed, you know, in case there's a wildfire up there. So I think that's probably the bill that's most impactful to Routt County residents.
Wonderful. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. I know many people said they wish they could join, but they had conflicts. So this is recorded and we really look forward to sharing it. So really, thank you so much for joining. And with that, I will transition us over to Jenna Battson. Jenna, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you. Jenna Battson is the Outdoor Water Conservation Coordinator in the Water Supply Planning section of the Colorado Water Conservation Board. She manages the state's turf replacement program and worked with the Urban Landscape Conservation Task Force as they identified practical ways to advance outdoor water conservation and transformative landscape change. Jenna holds a bachelor's degree in political science and government from San Diego State University and a master's degree in environmental and natural resources policy from the University of Colorado Boulder, where she focused on water conservation and law, resilience building, turf replacement, and the Colorado River. So she certainly brings her training and her over 1 year of experience of working with CWCB into the service of expanding this throughout the state. I'm also happy to say that Maddie and I had the pleasure of working closely with Jenna to move forward on a grant that supports regional opportunities, which Maddie will talk about. And Jenna, we're so glad to hear about the program and the state's opportunities. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me. And I'll address the elephant on the Zoom real quick that my voice decided to go out this morning. So I apologize for that, but we're going to get through this and it's going to be okay. I have backup tea, so we'll be fine. I have some slides to share if I'm able to get in here. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I just changed it, Jenna.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All righty. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, it looks great.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I will just dive right in. Maybe just make sure I can. There we go. Okay. So as mentioned, I run the state's turf replacement program, which I will provide a little bit more of a background on, as well as where we're at now, what's to come, and then some just focus on water savings that the state is really interested in. So for those of you who don't know, the turf replacement program originated from legislation in 2022. That was HB 22-1151, which was sponsored by your very own at that time representative, but now Senator Dylan Roberts, as well as Representative Catlin, and then Senators Simpson and Bridges as well. And this bill was really meant to help catalyze this water-wise landscaping movement, helping Colorado to adapt to climate change and growth while also maintaining these healthy and livable urban spaces. So the legislation charged CWCB to create and develop a turf replacement program to help incentivize this voluntary replacement of non-functional turf on residential, commercial, institutional, or industrial properties across the state. The program provides funding for local eligible entities to create or advance these turf replacement rebate programs, or they were given the opportunity to also focus on site-specific turf removal projects to really maximize the water savings while keeping our landscapes resilient, like livable, and again, aesthetically pleasing. So CWCB launched the program 6 months early in January 2023 to coincide with the release of the 2023 Colorado Water Plan. And there were 2 funding cycles that took place last year that resulted in all the funding being awarded to 50 entities across the state, which I'll provide a visual on in a couple of slides. And contracting is currently ongoing. We have 4 to go out of the 50, but many of the projects have started, which is really exciting to see all of the movement that was happening behind the scenes really start to come to fruition. So just a little bit more information on who is eligible, what this program really is. The legislation dictated all of this. So local governments, districts, water providers, utilities, 501c3 nonprofits who have worked with water resources or even in turf removal are eligible to apply, as well as Colorado's federally recognized tribes. This program was never set up as a direct rebate from the state to property owners or water users. So HOAs, single family residents are not eligible to apply, but they can always check with their local jurisdiction or district or municipality for opportunities. So what can be funded is actually quite flexible because communities are all at this really different stage of turf replacement efforts, and the funding really provides that flexibility to leverage the funding in a way that makes sense for them. So there can be design costs and, starting up a program and providing the program materials, which might be educational, marketing to get the word out. Also, of course, the installation, the labor, the removal, all of these components can be funded. It doesn't have to cover all of them. There are some guardrails for what cannot be funded. So again, we're really trying to create these livable, beautiful spaces that are also low water use. So you can't replace turf with this impermeable concrete material that's going to create more runoff. We cannot fund artificial turf installations, no water features, no invasive species. We also can't replace turf with the same turf. So if you're looking to remove Kentucky bluegrass, you're not able to just upgrade your landscape. So these guardrails just make sure that we're trying to hit the goals of the program. And the projects and this current phase will need to be completed and invoiced for by June 30th, 2025. But we do have reporting requirements that will go beyond that, which will be very important for the state to understand the actualized water savings, which I'll go to in a bit more. So as promised, this is the visual representation of who was funded. CWCB was able to provide funding to all of the eligible entities who applied. So this visual is just to give you an idea of where that is all going. So these 50 eligible entities from across Colorado participating in the program, they're receiving up to $50,000 in matching funds to, again, create or advance a turf replacement program with incentives or remove and replace turf on site-specific areas. So it is a bit geographically diverse. We've done some preliminary exploratory analysis, and we found that most of the irrigated turf is on the Front Range. So 74% of the award recipients are from the Front Range, but 26% are from the Western Slope, including Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, which received, as was mentioned, a grant to bring this pilot of turf replacement program to residences, businesses, municipalities in Routt County. This has been really wonderful to work with everyone on the team, and it's exciting for me to be here and be able to talk with everyone about this. So they will be able to talk way more about it, but I'm very excited to see their project come to fruition. And then the site-specific versus rebate incentive programs, very conveniently an opposite split, right? So 26% is site-specific programs, 74% rebate or incentives. And again, because these funds are limited, creating turf rebate programs is only sometimes the most sensible path for a local municipality or utility to really maximize funding and the water savings. So again, the awarded entities were allowed to design their own project or program in a way that really made sense for their community. All right, so the goals, the overall goal of this program is really to promote the efficient use of Colorado's water resources through the incentivized and voluntary replacement of non-functional turf to minimize these wasteful irrigation practices on areas that we don't really use. So this first line is actually directly from the legislation. So water-wise landscaping is this water and plant management practice that emphasizes using plants with lower water needs. And water savings and conversion success certainly depends on many factors, and there's many components to go into it. For example, what was the shape of the landscape before? How much irrigation was being applied? Was it being overwatered? Was it being underwatered? Ongoing maintenance is really important. Making sure that there's this functional and efficient irrigation systems that match the needs of the landscapes is very, very critical. So there's more to turf conversions than just vegetation. So that irrigation system is just hyper important, because if you're watering the same with new vegetation, then it's not really making that much of an impact. And no plant is going to be drought tolerant until it's established, right? It needs that water as it's growing and developing its deep roots. So this may sometimes mean that there's more watering that is happening during that establishment period, and that will definitely affect the water savings and what they look like in the first, second, third year. And we might not actually understand the full potential and what these water savings can be until after that establishment period. But again, we are requiring the reporting beyond the turf replacement program sunset in 2025. So we're really working to get a better understanding of the realized water savings rather than just the estimates that we're working with. And again, we may not know that for a few years, but it's just really important for us to track that. And then, we don't have to tackle all these conversions all at once. This can be incremental. And if you're doing it on your own property, you can, look around and analyze it and determine, where might there be this non-essential high water use areas, and start there. You don't have to do everything all at once, which I think I always need that reminder with everything that I do. So it's just important to know that this can be incremental and everyone can be involved in it. So the goal of the state's program, includes the water savings to help build statewide resilience in the face of changing climate and hydraulic conditions. But this might look different at the local level. There might be different goals that are complementary or completely outside of just water savings. And it's really important for a community to determine these goals and build these turf conversion projects that meet what the community wants and also what it needs. So, there's other benefits outside of water savings that people might be looking at: reducing the heat island effect through planting more trees and developing landscapes that are, drought tolerant and can withstand periods without supplemental irrigation, creating pollinator habitats. There's the landscape transformation has all these different benefits, and sometimes the water savings isn't the only goal that's there. And that community goal can really help guide how these conversions look, and then what other conservation tools are also leveraged and prioritized outside of turf removal. And so just going to speak a little bit more to the water savings and the potential of what these transformations can produce. So turf replacement is one of the many water conservation tools that was highlighted in the 2023 Colorado Water Plan that can be used to help reduce the projected municipal and industrial water supply gap that could be up to 740,000 acre feet in 2050. And I, again, want to emphasize that there are absolutely additional benefits outside of water savings that come from turf removal that are critical for community resilience. But CWCB is really interested in just examining the potential for these water savings, again, in the context of the municipal gap laid out in the water plan. So from the water plan, we know that about 7% of the state's water use goes to municipal diversions. And That number can certainly vary locally, but we know from the technical update that led to the water plan that the average municipal outdoor water use is just south of 40%, at 38% to be more precise, but of the municipal diversion. So this means that our municipal outdoor water use is around 2 to 3% of total state water use. So from there, if we're using the numbers from this memorandum of understanding that was signed in 2022 by many water utilities in Colorado that committed to a 30% reduction in non-functional turf. So if we're applying those numbers, and then we're also assuming an average of 50% of water use that's freed up from the removal of the non-functional turf, that probably puts us at just under 1% or a little bit less than that range of total statewide diversions that could be conserved from non-functional turf removal efforts. And this ongoing analysis, which there's a lot of assumptions built into this, is absolutely not supposed to dissuade or inhibit turf replacement efforts. All water savings are hyper important. They're very, very important on the local level, where these numbers are a bit bigger than on the statewide level. And just we're looking into this because, of course, water savings are important, but the more we know about all these complex components, the more we can responsibly move forward and really consider and prioritize this broad range of water conservation tools that can complement turf replacement efforts. So a little bit more on the local levels. For those local communities, potential water savings can definitely have a bigger percentage of total use and can have really meaningful implications for community resilience. So like I said, 38% on average of municipal water is used for outdoor uses. But we're really interested in breaking this down even further. And again, I want to caveat that we're still working with a lot of assumptions when we're looking at the impact of water savings. But when we tend to talk about this outdoor use at the municipal level, we're talking about all of this irrigation, all this water going to turf, right? Or sometimes you hear that it's just going to non-functional turf, but there really is this need to disaggregate these other uses to figure out the potential water savings that we can achieve. So, you know, what water use is going to other outdoor things like cooling towers, pools, car washes, fountains, you know, splash pads. From there, you know, what vegetation is out there that we want to keep, right? The tree canopies that we already have that we want to develop, what shrubs, what gardens, what already water-wise vegetation is there. So we need to help disaggregate that from that total outdoor water use. And then from there, we can get this understanding of, you know, how much turf is there, what's the irrigation need, how much of that is non-functional, how much of that are we trying to take out. So it's just this ongoing work that we're doing to try to really, you know, weed this out and figure out, you know, this is how much is going to turf, this is non-functional, so this is how much we can save. So this work is ongoing, and hopefully next time we all meet, I will have more updates because it means I've gotten further in my research with all of this. And then finally, I just want to leave you with some additional funding opportunities, which I will provide links for in the chat after I finish speaking. First, the TLC Challenge, the Transformative Landscape Change Challenge, which CWCB is working with Resource Central on. The application window for that is currently open until June 1st, and Resource Central will be working with the local communities to convert up to 2,000 square feet of turf to their garden in a box perennial kits with efficient and appropriate irrigation. So the eligible entities for this are the same as the turf replacement program, meaning homeowners and HOAs cannot apply directly. But if you know anybody who would be interested in applying to this, please pass on that link. Like I said, the deadline is June 1st. Resource Central also received a $1.5 million water plan grant last year to advance turf replacement efforts. And part of the component that they're doing is to work with Western Slope Partners. And I've been given the green light by Elizabeth Bowman there, who I'll have her contact in one of the links. So feel free to reach out to her to learn more about, you know, partnerships that can happen, even though they're based in Boulder. CWCB also has water plan grants that are available for transformative landscape change. We have regional grant managers who can help with any questions that you might have. I know Kelly talked about this with some of the legislation, but if there's anyone that you're interested in connecting with, I'm happy to be that bridge for you. And then finally, in the projects bill that Kelly mentioned, there is an additional $2 million that was included to continue the turf replacement program. And this was passed by the General Assembly, and CWCB expects the next funding cycle and application window to be open in the fall. And we will be providing updates on engagecwcb.org. You can always send me an email as well. I'm happy to let you know what I know when I know it. I unfortunately don't have any more information now because we'll have to go through some criteria improvement from the CWCB board, but keep a lookout for that coming out in the fall. And with that, I know we're going to hold questions to the end, so this is an irrelevant slide, but thank you all so much. And I look forward to chatting further at the end of this and asking any questions you have.
Great, Jenna, thank you so much. That was a great overview. And again, it's such a pleasure to have you as a wonderful partner on the ground here and across the state. So great presentation, and we will hold questions to the end, but it's great to see that we already have a couple in there. So if others have questions, please do put them in the chat and we'll have time at the end. So now it's my pleasure to shift the floor over to Madison Muxworthy. Madison Muxworthy is YVSC's Soil Moisture, Water, and Snow Program Manager, who many of you probably know. Maddie has held this position since 2021 after joining YVSC in another role as our Waste Diversion Director in 2019, making Maddie our longest running staff member at YVSC over 5 years. Maddie has been a key staff lead for YVSC's development of our water resilience programming, helping make connections between water change in the basin to actions that make a difference through the creation of programs, partnerships, and projects like you'll hear about today. In her role as our Soil Moisture, Water, and Snow Program Manager, Maddie has taken many leadership positions, including being elected to serve as the environmental representative on the Yampa White-Green Basin Roundtable in 2022, and serving as co-chair of the Yampa Basin Rendezvous during 2021 to 2023, and she currently continues to serve on the steering committee. So hopefully, Maddie, you can mention YBR at the end. She has also served as a technical committee member on the Yampa River Scorecard and continues to actively participate in important Yampa River collaboratives called the Yampa River Collaborative, which brings together many local environmental nonprofits to really advance water resilience and conservation. Maddie graduated in 2019 with a bachelor's in sustainability studies from Colorado Mountain College, our Steamboat campus, and I see Professor Tina Evans on the call today. And after Maddie's exceptional 5 years of professional service to the community in the region via her role at YVSC, it's very exciting, but she has been offered and has accepted a master's graduate student position working with Dr. Mackenzie Skiles in her Snow Hydrology Research to Operations Lab at the University of Utah, where she will start this fall. So it is such a pleasure to have you speak to us today, Maddie. Thank you so much for your many years of service to the Valley, and we know that you'll continue in your great professional career moving forward. So at this time, I'll transition it to Maddie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate that introduction and sharing the news. I am very sad to be leaving YVSC, but it's a wonderful opportunity and just really excited to continue my water work and increase my efforts and knowledge to bring back to the Yampa Valley at some future date. So today I'm going to be talking about YVSC's programming related to water conservation. And so we've been working for many years to conserve water in the Yampa River Basin. And so we're really excited to be sharing this information with you. And let me get my presentation loaded here. Awesome. And can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, perfect. So I will just jump right in. So as we know, aligning your landscape with climate appropriate and native plants is really important for conserving water. We recognize every day that our water is precious, and we need to conserve water in order to be sustainable in the Yampa Valley. And so an important way that we can do this in urban environments is to align our landscapes with the vegetation that is meant to be here in the valley, making sure that we're not bringing in vegetation or plants from other areas that don't really make sense for here and require a lot of water in order for them to work here in the Yampa Valley. So we are really excited, as Jenna mentioned, to be recipients of the CWCB Turf Replacement Program funding. We received this funding this past spring, and so we've been working on creating this program here right now, and we're really excited to launch actually right this week for 2 projects. And so we have a limited amount of funding for this first initial year, but we're really excited to trial it here in the Yampa Valley. And so this program is for residents in Routt County outside of the city of Steamboat Springs for right now. The city is currently working on updating their landscaping code, and so they want to align with that to make sure that they're aligning with all of their codes and everything. And so they're going to be looking into this right now and potentially rolling out a program themselves in the coming year. And so this is for residents, businesses, and agencies that are in Routt County, but outside of the city of Steamboat Springs. And so if you know of anyone, if you are one of these individuals and you're interested in applying for this funding, please apply today. We are currently rolling our application, and the deadline for that application is Wednesday, June 5th. You can see the application on our website, and then I'll provide a direct link once I stop speaking. And then after June 5th, we will review the applications that came in, and then we're going to assess them to decide who are our 2 applicants that we're going to be working with in order to transform their landscaping to Yampa-scaped low water use landscaping. So if you know of anyone, please share the word on this. We're really excited to be launching this to the Yampa Valley. As I mentioned before, we have been working on water conservation programming for a couple of years now. Since 2021, we've been working with the city of Steamboat Springs and Mount Warner Water and Sanitation District. And then we also got additional funding from the Craig Sheckman Family Foundation to launch our water conservation work. And so this has been really exciting, sharing information about water conservation in the city of Steamboat Springs. We've hosted various events and educational opportunities, including rain barrel sales, of which we still have a couple of rain barrels left. And so if you know of anyone that needs 1 or 2 rain barrels in the community, please do reach out to me. We're looking to sell the last of the rain barrels that we have. We have also done various programming like the Water Wednesday tips that you can see in the center of the screen, sharing information about water conservation, rules and regulations, and just tips for what ways that you can conserve water in the Yampa Valley. And then we've hosted various programming events in the Yampa Valley as well. This work has created various different guides and resources for community members so that they can take action to conserve water in the valley. We're really excited to be sharing our guide to Yampa-scaping professionals, which is our resource for landscaping professionals that work here in the Yampa Valley that are Yampa-scaping minded or have practiced water conservation throughout their work in the Yampa Valley. And so look to that guide for information if you're wanting to find a water conscious landscaper in the Yampa Valley. And then in the middle, we have our guide to Yampa-scaping, which is an interactive guide on our website. You can check it out. It's wonderful. It has a bunch of different native and low water use plants on that guide, and just some tips as well for how to be water conscious in your landscaping. And then late last year, we also released our water conservation toolkit for HOAs and property management companies. And this is serving as a resource and guide for those larger entities in the valley that need some more help on transforming maybe larger irrigation and things like that that are a little bit bigger than just maybe at the household level. So look to that guide if you are an HOA board member or if you're a property management individual. And then keep an eye out for more water conservation programming coming this year. We're really excited to be working on some new things. And then with that, we are really excited to be hosting our 7th annual Yampa Basin Rendezvous, which Michelle mentioned. The theme for this year is connecting the drops, linking weather, watersheds, and communities for a resilient water future. And this is going to be happening on Wednesday, May 29th and Thursday, May 30th at Colorado Mountain College. And it's organized by a plethora of water-related entities that you can see on the screen there. And I will put the link to register and learn more in the chat for that. And a plug for the first panel of the first day, because Kelly Romero-Heaney will be speaking on that panel. So I'm sure it will be wonderful. So please plan to attend the Yampa Basin Rendezvous. And with that, I will close and say thank you, and really looking forward to hearing questions from everyone. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Maddie. So we do have some questions in here. I think the first one is a really great one, and it's helpful, I think for many that are thinking about this work in water conservation, the terms functional turf and non-functional turf are kind of used frequently. And so, Jenna, if you could just talk about what does functional turf refer to and non-functional turf?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I probably should have led with that because it's helpful to understand that. And sometimes the definition is a bit not vague, but it's not necessarily in concrete. There's some references to what it means in HB 221151 that created the turf replacement program. Again, in the legislation that Kelly mentioned earlier, SB 5, which is prohibiting some installation of non-functional turf. And the way that one does it is it looks more about what's functional, right? So we don't want to be taking things out that is actively being used, is actively being recreated on. So think, soccer fields, baseball fields, and places that people gather and play. So there's, some people say non-functional turf is just, it when you see it, meaning it's usually only stepped on to be mowed or maintained. So it's not somewhere that you're going to see people hanging out and gathering. I've heard some people say it's something that, not a place you would put your baby on it because it's maybe not safe, right? It might be a median in the middle of the road. And 1151, which created the turf replacement program, does call out certain areas. So it references medians, areas adjacent to open spaces or transportation corridors, any sloped areas that are really hard to irrigate, things that are hard to irrigate in general, kind of those jagged pieces of land that you just see spray and run off. So what are we doing? No one's ever going to stand on it. CII properties that, again, nobody's using. There's common interest areas that maybe is a dividing space between two different properties but no one ever goes there. Maybe portions of residential lawns or yards. So it's anything that isn't being actively used. And if you don't typically see people on it, it can probably be replaced with more water-wise landscaping. And I like to think of the term as really coupled with the land use and the vegetation type. So if you're thinking about medians, we're definitely not advocating that no median should have any green in it at all. We're just advocating for more water-wise vegetation to be replaced there with that appropriate irrigation system that isn't just spraying water to spray water. So hopefully that's helpful. It's nuanced, but if you see people never standing on it, chances are it's non-functional.
That's great. That's very helpful and very clearly explained. So I think that is a really important part of this, is it's not a broad scale argument against all turf grass, but really carefully reflecting upon those places where it is being used or not used, and can we be more kind of drought ready or water wise, or employ Yampascaping where possible.
Yes.
Maddie, if you wouldn't mind expanding upon what does Yampascaping refer to?
Yes, so thanks for that question. Yampascaping is the process of transforming your landscape into a landscape that reflects and celebrates the Yampa Valley native and climate appropriate vegetation. And so we're trying to encourage permaculture principles. I see Tina's on here. And we're also just trying to encourage low water use plants as well. And so just celebrating the native plants of the Yampa Valley and making sure that we're implementing water conservation practices. And our interactive guide on our website is wonderful. It has a ton of information on there. So please check it out if you want to look into Yampascaping more.
Okay, great. And that leads us, Dr. Tina Evans, if you'd like to ask your questions which tie into opportunities to tie this to permaculture or food. So
yeah, thanks so much, Michelle. And thanks to everyone who's been speaking. It's been really informative today. So I had a question on the funding part and then a question on some of the thrusts of some of the funding. So my first question is, can colleges and universities be funded or funded as collaborators with other entities? And will there be another funding cycle beyond June 30th of 2025? That's my funding question.
Yeah, those are great questions. And the school and university is nuanced in a way because it depends on how they're designated. So if they're, if they're considered a special district, then yes, they are eligible to apply. If they're not, and they're, if it's a private university that's more falls in the institutional side of things, then they would not be eligible. But that doesn't mean that a school or a university can't partner with a local municipality or local water utility. And same goes with, HOAs if they wanted to partner with somebody or a nonprofit to apply for the funding and then work with them. One of the turf replacement funding recipients from this past round predetermined an HOA that they wanted to work with. They started partnering with it. So that was always going to be the property that they did. And that's absolutely acceptable with schools and universities as well. And if you have any that are interested, please put them in touch with me. And I'm happy to chat with them about the details and which route is best to go for that. And then your second question with the funding cycle, yes, there will be, because of the $2 million from the projects bill, there'll be an additional cycle that will be launching in late summer, early fall. I don't have any more concrete information on that right now, but it's coming this year.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. My last question, and I think I kind of know the answer to this already from what you've been saying about transformative landscaping and some of the different thrusts, but is there any interest, in these programs in edible landscapes and or permaculture design and implementation?
I have not had anybody looking towards an edible landscape, but there really are no guardrails in the legislation around that to be used as a replacement material, as long as the vegetation that's going in is, working to reduce water use and adhering to those xeriscaping principles. Because really one of the beautiful parts of waterways vegetation and native plants and grasses is those deep roots that they develop, which is what makes them more drought tolerant, because they're able to, pull on more sources and from groundwater, and they're also holding more in those roots. So that vegetation has really been the focus. And permaculture, from my understanding, involves some regenerative kind of agriculture practices and perhaps, moving and rotating the crops, which might mean more water requirements for establishment. So that might go against kind of the water saving goals, but I would be really happy to explore options with people that are interested in going that route, because there's nothing saying that we can't. So it's
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. Yeah, and permaculture, I do teach permaculture, and it just depends on your goals. So they do a lot of it in Tucson, just around diverting water from drainage on streets and stuff, just to do landscaping that's not food. So yeah, it could be really interesting to explore some options there, but I really appreciate hearing about these programs. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for questions.
Great, thank you. And Susie Ramig has again posed a really great point that also I think kind of connects to state level understanding of the challenges of moving forward on native landscaping, drought resilient landscaping. Is that many people say that we don't have a lot of options for local consumers to purchase truly local plants. And then Kate has noted that we do have a couple that are here, which are definitely worth mentioning. So Snow Country and Micah Gardenscapes. But I'll turn that into a question for you, Jenna. Are you hearing similar kind of, limited local native plant vending options for some of your Western Slope grantees?
I have, and I won't say this keeps me up at night, but it doesn't not keep me up at night with how quickly we're doing this landscape transformation and thinking about the supply, right? And what we have, and we don't want to, cut off momentum that is already being built because nothing's available that year, or your nursery is already sold out, or maybe you're going to a store that they have no idea the different water demands for the plants, other than this is just what you give it to make it live. So I do think that people are running into that, and it's the question of whether the market will be moved by what's being asked for and what's being demanded. And, you know, we think about that with the contractors and landscapers as well, and whether or not they are trained up on how to work with all of this different vegetation. So I think Colorado is in a good position to be able to meet the demand as it's going and as it's increasing. But yeah, anytime you can shout out your local nurseries that really know their stuff, it's really important, because we're all learning from each other too, and what works and what doesn't work. So it's the demand issue will be a thing, but I think that we'll be able to get there, and at least from, I mean, I'm probably biased because the news that I read is all this all the time, but it seems like there's a lot of news out there and media out there that's talking about it. So it's, you know, maybe transforming the social behavior and the preferences of people that are maintaining their landscapes. So they're then going to start asking for these supplies, right? And then people are going to want to provide them because that's what the people are asking for. So I think we'll be okay. But sometimes I do wake up thinking about that.
Well, that means you're the right person for this work. So thank you for your concern and all that you put into this. And it is interesting for those that are on the call too, the term xeriscaping was actually originated with Denver Water, which is, I think it's become such a pervasive term as people think about drought resilient landscaping. So we're certainly in the state that I think is, you know, at the ready to think about how do we transform how we, you know, landscape our built environments. So it really makes a difference to have these types of state funding opportunities and incentives. And importantly, throughout Western Slope, having strong partners, like thought partners and people that we can write, like you, Jenna, to ask our questions as we kind of ready our applications. And so I just want to thank you, Jenna, for your incredible service to the state and this work in the region. It has been such a to work with you, and it's great to hear these additional contacts. So I think for many of us, when we're out here in Western Slope, we wonder about, you know, can we just reach out? And I think that you've really demonstrated that you're willing to do that and happy to do that, and it is in the service of advancing state priorities and goals as well.
Definitely, yes. Thank you for all that, and please reach out anytime. I love to chat, so please do.
Great.
And I learn
Thank
from you every time I talk to anybody, so thank you.
That's awesome. Great. And so glad that your voice held up. I think in our last few minutes, I know that we do have one general comment, but again, I want to thank Maddie and Jenna for your time and the presentation. And it was such a pleasure to have Kelly Romero-Heaney join us from the state as well. She's hopped off, but we will share the recording. So I'll open it up for general public comment. And I think Abby had a comment, an announcement.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Abby Vandergraff. I do communications with YVSC. I just wanted to let you know that June is the start of our annual carbon-free challenge. It's throughout the month of June, starts on the 1st, ends on the 30th, and you can log the miles that you spend using alternative transportation, and you get chances to win prizes. There's fun events, so I'll put the link in the chat and consider signing up because it'll be a good time. Thanks.
Great. Wonderful. Any other quick comments, notes? Okay. Well, thank you. That concludes our May community meeting and our discussion on the very important topic of water conservation and watershed resilience. And again, thank you, Jenna, for joining us from the state, and Maddie for giving us a great overview of our existing programs and partnerships with the city and the district, and the funding opportunities that we've had to move this forward with Colorado Water Conservation Board. Everyone have a fabulous month and a great week, and thank you for joining.